So returning to our top story, last night's primary debate, presidential candidates took center stage in Detroit, where they sparred over issues like healthcare, climate change. Senators Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders spoke the most amount of time. Here's some of the highlights from last night.
Donald Trump disgraces the office of president every single day. And anyone on this stage tonight or tomorrow night would be a far better president.
So we've got to get rid of Donald Trump. But you don't decriminalize people just walking into the United States. If they're seeking asylum, of course we want to welcome them.
We've got a crisis on our hands. And it's not just a crisis of immigration, it's a crisis of cruelty and incompetence that has created a humanitarian disaster on our southern border. It is a stain on the United States of America.
We should deal with the tragedy of the uninsured and give everyone health care as a right. But why do we got to be the party of taking something away from them? We don't have to do that. We can give everyone health care and allow people to have choice. That's the American way.
Medicare for All is comprehensive. It covers all health care needs for senior citizens. It will finally include dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses.
But you don't know
Second of all,
you don't know that,
second
Bernie.
of all,
We'll come to you in a second,
I do know, and I wrote the damn bill.
Like far too many people in America, I've been personally impacted by gun violence. Had an 11-year-old nephew, Jeremy, shot and killed on a playground. We need to start looking at this as a public health issue, not a political issue.
9 times he said he wanted universal background checks. The next day he goes and he meets with the NRA and he folds. As your president, I will not fold.
I don't understand why anybody goes to all the trouble of running for president of the United States just to talk about what we really can't do and shouldn't fight for.
The bottom line is, you talk to any economist, there is not a single example in history where a trade war had a winner. Trade wars are for losers.
We must not only stand up against Donald Trump and defeat him in this next election, but we must also ensure that we don't just tolerate or respect our differences, but we embrace them.
Democrats win when we figure out what is right and we get out there and fight for it. I am not afraid. And for Democrats to win, you can't be afraid either.
It's time to stop worrying about what the Republicans will say. Look, if it's true that if we embrace a far-left agenda, they're going to say we're a bunch of crazy socialists. If we embrace a conservative agenda, you know what they're going to do? They're going to say we're a bunch of crazy socialists. So let's just stand up for the right policy, go out there and defend it.
So Chief Washington correspondent Major Garrett is with me now, and we're talking about part deux.
Yes.
Or two. I say deux because Vlad's not here, so I'm doing my French bit, just for Dad.
You're the Vlad translator.
Yes.
I understand. I understand.
The whisperer, they call me at times. So listen, let's talk about this. Joe Biden is on the stage. Definitely the front runner in this by all polls, way ahead of everyone else. But he's on stage with Kamala Harris, who we know knocked him down a little bit after the last debate, and Cory Booker, who's been taking shots at him as well. What can we expect?
So Joe Biden is, as you said, the front runner in the sense that the polls put him at the front. But the polls are not predictive, number one. Number two, most of the polling information for Biden the last 6 weeks has been negative in the sense that he has been shrinking in his lead. Elizabeth Warren has gained a little bit. Others have gained a little bit. And you sense a softening around the idea of Joe Biden as this strong and forceful front runner. His debate performance the first time around did not help him. He looked, if not lackadaisical, uninvolved. And he seemed surprised that there was this energetic pushback about his legislative record. So I think for the Biden campaign, and for Biden in particular, there has to be a sense of mission about tonight. Not a sense that things are slipping away, but you better remind people why you were in public life for so long, that you are energetic enough for this task, that you have the language and the force not only to win in your own contest, but to take on Donald Trump. All of those things are now questionable in ways they weren't before the first debate. So Joe Biden created questions around his campaign with his own less than stellar performance. He has got to reverse that trend line. If he doesn't tonight, I think his campaign could be in a position of not treading water, but beginning to sink. And that, I think, is the biggest storyline going in tonight. Does Joe Biden give himself energy for the next couple of months? And if he doesn't, and Democrats start saying, wait a minute, this guy does not have it, whatever he had is missing, then the Warren, Kamala Harris, and alternatives begin to assert themselves. And if you look at last night's debate, the one thing I will say about it, the spirited dialogue and the heavy drill down on policy, if I'm Joe Biden, I'm like, I better have all that stuff not just memorized, but familiar and forceful, so people know that I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so that's sort of my follow-up question, because he has said, hey, I'm not going to be as polite as I was last time. You can frame it as politeness, but you're right. It sort of came across like he hadn't actually been taking anybody serious on the debate stage, and somehow took it personally that Kamala Harris would attack him on his history as a politician, which is what you're supposed to be doing.
Right. That whole polite thing is it's what a campaign does when it can't explain what just happened.
Right.
I was being too polite. No, that's not it. Former Vice President Biden, if he'd spent any time looking at the covers of progressive magazines, The Nation, Harper's, in the last 6 months, all of these things were forcefully articulated against him. His history on busing, mass incarceration, crime bill, et cetera, et cetera. You cannot say this all happened because I was polite. No, it happened because you were inattentive.
Yeah.
You were not taking this challenge and this moment seriously. And let me tell you, if there's anything that is running through the ideas and concepts of Democrats as they look at 2020 election, it's passion, seriousness, and big aspirations. That's what Joe Biden has got to answer for tonight.
So then when we look at sort of the next...
Because you know Kamala Harris is going to come.
Well, yeah.
And you know Cory Booker is going to come.
Yes. So let me ask you this, because they have been attacking him on his record, right? Mostly in regards to race. Cory Booker has been attacking him on his criminal justice record. Kamala Harris is in a funny position. She's a former prosecutor. Some of her critics are looking at her record as a prosecutor. So I don't know if she could really go after him on criminal justice without, finding herself in a similar position, being questioned as well. But after all of that, my general question is, who will be sort of the next level of people to look at on the debate stage?
That's it. I mean, those are the three tonight. I mean, Andrew Yang will be interesting. Andrew Yang is on the cusp of qualifying for the next round of debates in September. Andrew Yang has an interesting following, and he has this guaranteed universal income idea, which is gaining traction among some Democrats. I would say he's on the outer edge of this sphere, but nowhere near the top. Tonight is going to be about Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and Joe Biden. But I don't think it's about anyone other than Joe Biden. Joe Biden cannot look as if he's lost on stage, which in moments in the first debate, he looked as if, what's going on here? Wait a minute. I'm the former vice president. I ran with Barack Obama. Isn't that enough? And guess what? No, it's not.
I kind of wondered if part of that had to do with the fact that his campaign had been so focused on, I'm the guy to beat Donald Trump.
Sure.
I don't have to worry about trying to beat all these other people, because what I'll do for you is I'll beat Donald Trump. So one thing that the president does very, very well is control the narrative for his own party and sometimes the Democratic Party, right? That's what he's been doing with these tweets and all that sort of thing. And I asked this question for last night. The president didn't come up that much last night, though he did. But do the Democrats run the risk of the president setting their conversation agenda, particularly because when it comes to Joe Biden, the topic of his record on race is a campaign issue?
Sure. And the president does have a skill set that matters in driving narratives, creating conversations, creating controversy that everyone starts to look at, and then he gets to this, what he always calls the underlying. Well, I know all that wasn't accurate. I know that was hyperbolic, to use the very forgiving language of his acting chief of staff, Mick Mulvaney. But I was really talking about something like this other thing. Let's just get to that other thing. Well, what is that other thing for Democrats and race and things like that? Look, Joe Biden can talk about his record on the crime bill. If you go back and look at statistically, crime was a very serious problem in this country in the 90s. Much more serious than it is now. Much more serious. And there was a legislative remedy. Biden can talk about that. But you better be engaged, and you better know why you did what you did, how it informs what you will do in the future, what lessons you've learned. You better know your own history. Trust me this. Kamala Harris and Cory Booker know their own history and will come at Joe Biden in their own voice with their own sense of provocative appeals for the future. And when you have this undercurrent of, is Joe Biden ready for the future? Is he generationally out of touch? These themes all come together. So I don't think tonight is about anything other than those three.
So come on, man, isn't really going to work.
And don't fall back on polite. That's not it.
Yeah.
And Democrats will see through that.
Yeah.
And there is this potential for Joe Biden to have one bad night and have a good night. That happens in politics. Politicians learn. Yeah. And if he has a good night tonight and solidifies things, he is still the person, statistically, with the best chance of becoming the Democratic nominee. Why? What do we learn from Donald Trump? All you need is 26 to 32 in every contest. If you hold on to 26 to 32, guess what? You win.
Yeah, right. Major Garrett, thank you very much.
Thank you.